Hello. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to Visa Issues for International Grads. Although I think we don't have grads here, except for this side, right? It's great to be here, and people with accents rule. So my name is Garcia, and I am one of the vice presidents here at Full Sail, and I'm thrilled to do this. I was, this month, it's been 20 years since I was sitting there, trying to figure this out as well, so it's really cool to do it. And so I have my great panelists here. First, Henry Lim. He's an attorney, if you couldn't figure that out already. But he's a cool-looking attorney, though. And he's been, he practiced law here, he has his own firm here in Orlando, Florida. And he's been practicing law for 16 years. And he was just telling me he's a Chinese Latin American. And
Chino Latino.
Yeah, and Chino Latino, that's right. That's cool. Our second panelist is Martina Knezevic.
Correct.
All right, I had to practice it like 20 times. And she's a graduate from Full Sail from last year in Entertainment Business Masters, and she's from Croatia. And she's currently working at IMG in Bradenton, which is a sports academy, and she managed the golf business. Our third panelist is Nha Ly. She's from Vietnam. She's a graduate of Full Sail also at 2011 from computer animation. Works for Luma Pictures in Los Angeles. Currently working in Avengers 2. Yeah, it's just cool. And our last panelist is Kerry Allen. He's a game developer, Full Sail graduate from, what year, Kerry? It's like 05?
2006. Yeah.
Almost there, yeah. 06, and he worked for a number of studios, including EA, T-World, Microsoft, Activision, so tons of experience. So this is, hopefully it's going to be a great panel. I'm going to start out with some questions to them and let them talk a little bit about their story, and that after about 45 minutes or an hour, we'll turn it over to you, and you can ask your questions. And also welcome whoever is watching us online. Sorry we don't have closed caption. So, I'll start. I'll start with Martina, and I ask the same question to everyone. Then, when did you decide you wanted to work in the U.S.?
Well, basically after a few weeks, when I got at Full Sail, I felt like home. I liked the culture, and I decided this is the place to be. It offers the best opportunities in the entertainment business world, and I wanted to learn from the best. So after a few weeks, I already knew I want to stay here and started focusing on it. So I wasn't just a student at Full Sail, I became also a student of the visa process. It's not a very interesting topic, but you have to excel it if you want to stay here.
Okay. We'll touch on that in just a moment. How about you, Jan? Yeah.
I actually start my degree as a game degree in Seattle, and I decided to transfer to Full Sail to learn about film. And at the moment, they offer the bachelor degree. So I found out that in able to have a work visa in the U.S., I have to have the bachelor degree. So I contact some people at Full Sail, and they was really helpful, and they helped me find some scholarship and transfer my degree from the school in Seattle to Full Sail. So I decided to go to Full Sail.
How about you, Kerry?
So my story is a little bit different. I was raised on an island just off the coast of England called the Isle of Man. And when I was 16, my parents decided that we'd move to America. And we figured that we'd have better opportunities. My brothers and myself would have better opportunities here. So I actually graduated high school just up the road here in Lake Mary. And then I started school at Full Sail. At the time, I was 21 years old. And the paperwork hadn't gone through with my parents' green card yet. It was still in the pending status. And so because I was no longer a dependent, I had to leave the country. The law at the time, I know it's changed since then, but at the time, the law said I couldn't be here. So I went back to the Isle of Man for a couple of years, saved up some money, and then came back as an international student, just like all of you. But from about 6 years old, I decided I wanted to make video games. And then when I did get to Orlando, when I was in high school here, I knew that this was the school I wanted to go to.
So something that is interesting, and it's also in my own case, and you mentioned being a student of the visa process, is that you have to make that decision very early when you want to. You can't wait until you're about to graduate to say, well, let me see what I can do. How can I stay if that's what you want to do? And the people that I have met, just like you have, seen that they made that decision even before arriving to Full Sail. So because you made that decision so early, how that did change your approach to looking for a job? When did you start looking for a job and knowing that you have a different mountain to climb? How did it change your approach?
So what I did, first I researched everything in regards to the visa before I even started my job search. So I reached out to a lawyer. I've talked to International Student Center, to Career Development. I reached out to grads to see what is their story. So once I had a basic understanding of what I need in order to get a job, that's when I started actively looking for a job, and the visa, education, and the job search grew together. And what I did, I understood that I have to focus on international companies that are already familiar with the process. And I had my game plan. I had one company in mind, researched their history of employees. I knew that they had international employees already. And yeah, that's my way of approach.
How about you, Jan?
Yeah. My industry, the film industry, is very open. You get to see people from around the world to work in the U.S. So with when I first graduated, I knew that I'm going to have a 12-month OPT. So I just use it to apply for any studio that I want. And when I first got my job, I asked them if the company, if they plan on hiring international students or give them a visa or not. Nowadays, most of the companies don't, because when you work on a movie, you work on project base. So it's like 3 months contract, 5 month contract. Now, it's really rare that the studio, they make staff, because when they make you a staff position, they will provide you with a visa, but not really anymore. The last company I knew did that was Digital on Demand, but they only went bankrupt. So, but the good thing is I have an extra 17 months OPT after 12 months. So it's totally 29 months. It's a really good time to earn all of the experience you want, really. And then I know after that, I will have to decide to go back to my country to work for the studio over there, or the next step is really unknown, because if you want to go to Canada, you can go to Australia. Nowadays, is the other option. But my plan changed because I fell in love with America as American, sorry, and we decided to get married. So it's a different road, but yeah, that was my experience.
How about you, Karen?
So I think that you have a lot of resources available to you while you're a student at Full Sail. If you're all international students or part of the International Student Society, Full Sail has always had a very strong international community. If you look around the room, there's probably someone in this room that can answer any question you could think of. with regards to visas and OPT and what happens when you graduate. So I definitely took advantage of that. I got to know all the other international students. I got to know my international liaison at the time. We were all very close. So I learned really about what the visa process was. And then I also took advantage of career development to make sure that when it was time to graduate, that I had a job lined up fairly soon after graduation. Definitely career development is an underused resource, I think, by a lot of Full Sail students. So those guys are awesome, and they're a really good place to get a job. So it's definitely something you should follow up with in the last couple of months at Full Sail.
I would like to add one more thing, because a lot of my classmates are from Singapore, Malaysia, and China. From the experience, I know that after 29 months internship and work in the U.S., it was really easy for them to get a job back home in Singapore and Malaysia in a big production company, game company. And I actually had offer from ILM in Singapore to go to work there. So that's one of the options you can start to look ahead when you graduate. But just use your OPT as much as you can and gain experience in the U.S. Because over here we have all of the big company on a big project. And you can learn a lot.
Absolutely. So, Henry, you're the expert in the room. Also, why don't you walk us through a little bit the options that our graduates could have with bachelor's degree, with master's degree, and the OPT? What kind of options do they have, and what kind of timelines and costs, and how do they start? When is a good time to call an attorney?
It's always a good time to call an attorney. Just don't call Saul. A good time to hire an attorney would be when you're ready for the H-1B process. You don't really need one before that unless you have specific questions that you'd like to have answered that you can't find resources for. OPT is really your best vehicle because it provides a wide open access to the job market. What we find the toughest part for you is going to be able to find an employer who's willing to go through the process to file what eventually will be an H-1B. It's a long process. It's not a certain process either. For example, you do know that in order to qualify for an H-1B, that there's caps on H-1B applications. The numerical cap right now is 65,000 for the first-time H-1Bs. And the government begins to receive the applications 6 months prior to the fiscal year, and the fiscal year begins October 1st. So therefore, on April 1st is when companies begin to file the H-1B applications with the government. Part of the problem is that, for example, last year, for the 65,000 visas that are available, the government received 180,000 applications. So that puts you at around a 33% chance of being selected, even if you do qualify for an H-1B. So this tends to have a chilling effect with employers, and they may be hesitant about hiring you if that's your first contact with them. If you've had the opportunity to work with them with an OPT, then they're likely more open to going ahead and at least, they like your work, they want to keep you here, then they're a lot more likely to assist you with an H-1B. That's been our experience. I don't know what the panels here thinks about that, but that's been our experience with our clients, is that you typically have a relationship with the employer. The other thing that I would mention is that don't be discouraged if one employer tells you, no, we won't do it. You don't necessarily want to work for an employer like that. And part of the reason is the H-1B program is a fantastic program because the companies are able to seek out the best talent that they want to hire, regardless of where they come from. If you have a company that's closed-minded, then perhaps the rest of their employees are not the best talented in that company because they're closed-minded to the fact of hiring from outside of the U.S., where much better talent is available elsewhere. What we hope to see in future legislation is an increase in the number of H-1B visas for this reason. And it did happen in the 90s where they increased for a period of time because the demand was so high. And when you think about it, it makes sense to offer H-1B visas to foreign workers. What ends up happening is the following. Let's say that you are the most talented person in your field, and there's a company who wants to hire you. If they hire you, their gross profit margins are going to increase because of your work product. They may even be able to hire even more people as a result of your work. And that typically tends to be the case with H-1B applications. Now, if for whatever reason we are unable as a government to issue an H-1B to you, then your options as the most talented person in your field, you're going to take your talents and go elsewhere. And now you're going to be competing against our U.S. companies. So there is an economic argument, there's several economic arguments in favor of increasing H-1Bs throughout the board. But that is really the process that you want to go through. Once you have identified your employer, you have established a relationship with your employer, now's the time to say, well, let's talk to an attorney about what the long-term prospects are going to be. Because when somebody gets here, they usually get here with a student visa, they get their OPT. If you're in a STEM degree, you can get another 17 months on top of the first 12 months. And that gives you a lot of time to have multiple shots at the H-1B process. Then you get your H-1B, that's good for 3 years. You can extend it for another 3 years, and in the meantime, apply for PERM, which is the process for the green card. And in the meantime, you can always fall in love.
You have to fall in love if you stay here long enough.
Love is a beautiful thing.
I love it.
Well, yeah. I looked down because I fell in love, and then
There you go.
18 years this month.
Fantastic.
But when you move to a country, I mean, those are things that can happen too.
We have a lot of beautiful people in this country.
A lot to give. Now, having gone through the process, I'm sure that you learn a lot of things, and I know that I can learn. I did learn a lot of things, and when people ask me, there are a couple of things that I always tell them: try not to do this, try to do that. Knowing what you know today, what are the things that you would tell people to do and not to do? I'll start with you, Martina.
The first thing to do is think about what makes you different. Why should someone hire you when he can hire an U.S. Full Sail graduate? So how can you bring more business to the company? What makes you unique? So think about the values that you offer. And then, of course, start on time. Don't wait with your OPT 3 months prior graduation. On day one, when you've decided to stay here, start networking, start your research, become the student of the visa process. So start on time. So these are the things that I really recommend. And focus more on international companies, global companies that maybe already exist in your home country, so you can easily connect them and they can use your languages and your business background. Focus on your strength. So I know we don't start from zero, we basically start from below because we don't have the papers, but focus on what you bring to the table. So you bring another language, you bring experience from back home, and try to find a way how to present that. And then, of course, timing. So I graduated in August and I got my job in September, and right now we are filing for the H-1B visa. So I basically had 3 months to prove myself within the company. So be prepared to work harder than everyone else to make sure you're worth the sponsorship. So these are the do's that I highly recommend. The don'ts are: don't wait with your OPT. have the timing in mind. So let's say you start working in December, have the April 1st in your mind. So yeah, these are the things that I would recommend.
Yeah.
One of the things you said is a great experience, but for our industry, keep in mind that your confidence is the best value in you, because like when you went to work, nobody really care who you're from, and actually you have an extra thing that you can speak another language. Just say whatever you want, nobody understands. It's kind of fun too. And everybody gonna come to you and ask you to teach them your language. But my coworkers so far, they are all really nice. And when you apply for a job, the first thing to ask is if the company plans to hiring for long term, and what can you do to get a staff position. Because some of my coworkers from Europe, they came on their way here and they got a staff position. It depends on the demand at the company, if they need that type of job or not. Like, for example, like some company, they really want a long-term modeler that they can rely on to keep it a company for a long time, and they're gonna sponsor the visa for that guy. But on the other hand, if they something that they only available at the company, some position, and they're gonna say no. So don't give anything personal that you are not good and they don't want you. It's the demand of the market. So keep being confident and apply for different company, and whatever job you get, just take it as a chance that you learn and growing. And when you have experience and you have connection with a lot of people, it's really easy for you to get job later. And a lot of my friends actually really love to go back to work in the country, because over there they got really high respect with their experience in the U.S. Or then the next option, you can choose to go to Canada or Australia, all of the great countries that love to hire international students.
Gary?
Well, being British, unfortunately, I don't get to play the extra language card, but I respect everyone that can.
How about the accent?
Yeah, the accent, yeah, I get to play the accent card. But definitely aim higher. Make sure there's a way that differentiates you from other Full Sail grads, from other colleges, from really all your competition. You really want to excel. Not only will that actually put you in a better position to get the job, but also it will make you more attractive to larger companies. I've found that larger companies are the ones that typically have the resources to sponsor for H-1Bs later on. So I've worked for a lot of large companies, for Activision, Microsoft, and EA, and I've never had a problem getting an H-1B with those guys. It's actually quite funny when you go into the embassy for your interview for your H-1B, and the guy jokingly takes your paperwork and he said, "Oh, who are you working for?" Microsoft. Never heard of them. So yeah, you do have that going for you if you're working for a larger company. So definitely that's where I'd aim for if I was trying to get my first job. As far as don'ts, definitely don't be disheartened if doors do close on you because you have to apply for a visa. I've had companies that have interviewed me, gone through the interview process, gone very strong, had a very strong interviewing with them, and felt like they were about to make me an offer. And somewhere in the pipeline, normally I've mentioned to them at the start that they need to sponsor me, but it's gotten lost in communication throughout the interview process. And then at the end, they say, "Okay, great. If we were to make you an offer, when can you start?" And you say, "Well, as soon as you can take care of my H-1B." And they say, "Wait, what?" And then you never hear back from them again. And that does suck, but you can't be disheartened by that. There are a lot of opportunities out there for H-1B applicants in the entertainment industry. Yeah.
There's one other thing that I would like to add, that you're not necessarily limited to H-1Bs either. I mean, if you're a person of extraordinary ability,
I was going to ask about that.
You can apply for an O-1 visa. I mean, it depends. So on your background, your level of ability, your experience, and things of that nature, especially in the industry that you guys are in. It's just something that you may want to keep in mind, not to just have a closed mind as to what's available out there. There's you can get pretty creative as to ways to extend the status here. And remember, that's really the goal, is to find a way to keep you here in status for as long as possible so that we have as many options available for you. So that's...
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. And because we've been talking about very specifically about H-1B, but I know depending on the individual, on the field, the outstanding, or folks that come with money to invest, create their own companies, so those sort of things. So.
Right. I mean, you can get pretty creative. I mean, even if it does require you to temporarily have to leave the U.S. for, say, a year or so, I mean, we can find ways, creative ways to bring you back as soon as possible, even through a creation of your own company, which is something that you may have always wanted to do anyway. There's intra-company transferees. Those are the L1 visas. Even if you don't have an employer, for example, to sponsor you for your H-1B, open up a company and sponsor yourself for an H-1B. I mean, that's something that's possible. There's problems in the long term with that strategy, but if we're looking for a short-term type of solution, there are many ways to get creative.
Thank you for that. I was going to go there. The other part to this, the H-1B is a temporary work visa.
Right.
So one thing that people have to keep in mind, you folks have to keep in mind that the end goal, if you want to stay and have roots in the U.S. and stay for a long time, is not to get that H-1B, because even though it's a great achievement, if you get to obtain it, those 3 years will fly by you before you know it, and you have to renew. And if you just wait one more time, they will pass by quickly, and it'll be 6 years before you know it again. So always make sure that that you have a strategy for the end goal. And with the how long is end up the if you H-1B is up to 6 years? That's correct.
Right.
And
well, in the process, the hope is that the company will also sponsor you for a PERM, which is the labor certification process, through which you would get a green card. There's ways around that if it's an extraordinary ability where you don't have to file a PERM application, but that's on a case-by-case basis.
Give an example of extraordinary ability. We got very good folks here.
Yeah. If you have international recognition, if you've been published, if you have received awards or things of that nature from internationally recognized groups, that's when you start really exploring the extraordinary ability visas that are available, be it EB2, EB1, also the O1s. There's an alphabet soup of visas available. So they're looking for internationally recognized type of achievements and accolades.
In general, what is the cost? I know that certain companies sometimes sponsor you fully and they pay all the costs, all the fees. And sometimes they say, we'll do the sponsorship, but we don't pay the fees. So, and depending on the economic terms, I would be believing that could be more common or less common. I'm sure you've seen it come and go. But if it's the case that the student, that the company is not willing to pay the fees, how much are the student need to be prepared to invest?
It's $1 million. No, it's about 10,000. 10,000 is a pretty good average. When you start talking about attorney's fees, immigration costs, things of that nature, 10,000 would not be an unreasonable fee. You could perhaps get it a little lower than that, but I'm going to tell you right now, certain attorneys will give you one figure, but then they'll start billing you every month, and every month, that's the attorney trick. And basically, you just be prepared to have anywhere between $8,000 to $10,000 ready for the initial H-1B process.
And with that, I'll give you my do's and don'ts. Don't hire an hourly attorney. Hourly attorney. Make sure that this is one fixed amount, and so
that it's in writing. And that's in writing.
That is in writing.
Right.
So you can call that attorney, ask questions, and don't feel like every minute that you have that person on the phone is charging you more money. I used to have an attorney that I'd run into him in a party at night, and I wouldn't even say hi. Like, I'm afraid he's going to charge me $200 for shaking his hand.
That's 0.2 hours.
But it was true. So try to do that. The other thing that I always tell people is no one is more interested in this process than you. Is your life that is going to change or not? So when my process never walked up as fast as the day that I walk it through. I said, oh, it's in the hands of the attorney, and then somebody had to sign it, somebody else had to sign it. That will come to the desk of the manager and stay there whenever he feels or he has the time to sign it. Because his life is not being affected by that, or her life is not being affected by that. Yours is. So don't trust that people have the same urgency that you do, because nobody does. So when I had to sign a paper, I would go to my boss and put it right there. It's like, right there. Yeah, here's the pen. So what? Yeah, right there. Yeah, sign it.
Well, to that effect, let me just talk very briefly about something since you brought it up. In specifically Latin American cultures, there is the notarios, okay? And in Latin American countries, in order to be a notario, you typically have to be an attorney first. So a notario in Latin American countries is a person of prestige, a person of high importance. In the United States, you fill out an application, you pay a fee, you take an online course, and ta-da, you are a notary. So it's not the same thing. Coming out of high school, I became a notary. So it's not the same thing. So be very, very careful as to who you hire. There's people who claim to be attorneys. They're attorneys in their country, but not attorneys here. And that's also problematic. So you need to be very careful as to who you hire, find out what kind of experience they have, specifically with business-related visas.
I wanted to ask you guys, now that you've been here for a while, maybe I'll start with you, Carrie, since you've been here for a long time. By the way, Carrie is one of those graduates that are always around. Yeah. I met him when he was a student, and it doesn't seem that never passes like a year without seeing you, which is super cool. Thank you for always being around and wanting to help our students. But is working in the U.S. what you thought it would be?
Yeah, I've always wanted to be a game developer, and like I said before, my parents moved here thinking that me and my brothers would have better opportunities, and I think I've had some amazing opportunities while I've been here. I've got to work on some really cool projects. I've worked on Connect, I've worked on Guitar Hero, I've worked on Madden, NCAA, worked on some really cool stuff, and I know that that the market back in the UK is decent. The video game market is, the UK is not the worst place to be for video games, but the US is definitely the best place to be for video games. So yeah, I'm really glad that I got to come here, and I honestly have no plans to leave at this point. I'm married now, and yeah, I'm really happy here.
He found love.
I did. I found love.
Love is a beautiful thing. How about you, Jan?
Well, our industry a little bit different now. Is it's really an open market. People open company in other countries like Singapore, Australia, and Canada. So it's a lot of my coworkers go to London to work. So you feel funny because everybody tries to go to America, but some of them try to find experience in the Europe, or a lot of them love to go to Australia, just for different experience. So keep in mind, it's not international student. We don't have to like work in America. It depends on the experience you want to earn, and look at the project they offer. So for me, like, because I keep continuously have a contract over here, but if somebody offer me a job to London, I would love to go too. So it's really an open market for film industry.
London's overrated.
So fucky.
I have a Frame International student that worked really, really, really hard after animation graduate, and after going through all that and got hired at Sony Animation, and she's working with some great projects. A couple of years later, they closed down the studio and moved to Vancouver. So, How about you? Is working in the U.S. what you thought it was going to be?
Well, yes, I truly believe this is the land of opportunity, especially in entertainment business. Back home in Germany, Croatia, it's not existing like it is here, and I want to learn from the best and make the best experience. So Full Sail helped me a lot, the 12 months, to adjust to the culture, to know how they communicate. I'm European, I don't do small talks or, I was fascinated how nice everyone here is and open. So it definitely helped me in the position where I am right now to understand how to connect to people, how to talk to people, how to build relationships, be prepared for long hours, especially in the entertainment world. But in general, I do believe that the United States offer you opportunities. And the more you put in, the more you get out. Back home in Europe, it's all set and it's in hierarchy, and you know exactly what you have to do in order to get somewhere. And here, you don't have those strict rules. So much you put in, the harder you work, the more you will get. So it's all upon you.
Last question before we start asking questions. What is the biggest learning, the biggest takeaway out of going through this process?
To focus on your strength, to know what you bring to the table, to know how to present it and how to connect to people. So focus on your strength, find them, and how to communicate them.
Yeah.
For me, I only remember whatever my teacher taught me at school, and it's to be nice to the person next to you. I don't know if you hear that, but building a good karma, because this industry is really small. It's big, but it's small because you keep seeing the same people wherever you go to work. So it should be nice, friendly, smile, I think, all the time. And work is hard. It's very long hour. People complain about American working too much. True. Sometimes on the dev line, we have to work on Saturday and Sunday also. But keep the balance on your lifetime, your lifestyle. Don't get burned out, because the creative is something you cannot earn by working long hours. You have to play and work. And American people are very friendly. My coworker, they love to talk about food and different cultures. So it's a good thing about America. You can blend in very easily. So you should be confident, being yourself, keep your culture, and you only have something to share with people. And that's my experience.
Carrie?
So they say that everything is bigger in America, and it really is. The opportunities are bigger, your potential is bigger, but your aim also has to be bigger. You have to aim higher. You have to work that little bit harder to try and really level the playing field. You're sort of at a disadvantage over people that are graduating, other people that are graduating with you. So you have to work that little bit harder. You have to show your talent a little bit more. So yeah, just aim higher and think bigger, and that's the American way.
Okay, thank you. And I think now we're ready to start taking questions from you. And that thing I can't see, she's going to find you.
Hi, my name is Dipanshu. I'm graduating next month, so I was told that for the H-1B work visa, the applicants are chosen in a lottery system, and people from technical fields are given more preference in that over the entertainment people like us. So how do we actually work around that? How do we do that?
Well, it's not, I'm not sure that they get any more preference. It is a lottery. I mean, it really is a lottery. So, I mean, don't not apply because you think that you're not going to get it. Go ahead and try. But in your situation, I would shoot for the OPT as well, just to be absolutely sure that you have a backup plan. But don't be afraid to apply despite what you hear. Okay?
We talk a lot about the OPT. The interesting thing about the OPT is that it's a great chance to also be deliberate about who you go work for. And because if you go work for somebody that does not meet the requirements that they've been describing, quote unquote, experience with visas that will be open to that process, you may as well wait and find the employer that you can get that chance with. And if what you want to do is stay.
So don't marry the first girl you kiss.
No, marry the first girl you kiss. That's great. Question.
Got one right back here. Hi, I have a question from the live stream from
Great.
Diogo. And this is for Nya specifically. You said that you had extended your OPT for an extra 17 months. Can you explain exactly how you extended that?
As I remember correctly, so maybe Anthony will have information for sure, but if you bachelor degree in science, like I graduated a computer science bachelor degree, so after 12 months, what I did was I contacted the International Student Office over here, and they gave me the information that enabled you extend to the 19 months. You need the company that qualify for, it's called E-Verify, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, the company has to be enrolled in E-Verify, which is the program that they use to determine whether or not the people that they're hiring are lawfully able to work in the U.S.
Yeah, you need to ask the HR human resource person at that company that if the company qualify for that, enable to extend your OPT. But after that, if you get a contract offer, and you will able to apply for that.
Question?
Hi, guys. My name is Jorge. I'm an international student from Ecuador studying the mobile development program, which I think is a STEM program, right? It's programming computers.
Yeah.
And that. So my question is, I've heard that many STEM careers or technical careers doesn't have to like go through the H-1B cap in certain situations. What are those situations actually, and how you like don't get through that cap?
It's somewhat of a specialized type thing, but typically you're looking at government type jobs. It's somewhat restrictive. So I mean that's something that you would you sit down with an attorney and go one-on-one to see if you could be H-1B exempt. There are several ways to become H-1B cap exempt. And depending on the company that's hiring you, whether or not they qualify, they meet the qualifications to be cap exempt. So there are ways around it, but very, very limited. And it depends on the company who's hiring you.
Question?
Hello, I'm Ketan. How about I'm like, if I want to start up a business here, how does the visa work? I mean, the OPT is just for 1 year, and after that, how am I supposed to stay here legally?
Well, the business would then file an H-1B for you. Okay, that's how it would work. It's an operating business now. It can't be just a business that's set up on paper. Okay, it has to be actually functioning. You have to show the taxes. You have to show your P&L statements and things of that nature. But it can eventually sponsor you. Now, what I had mentioned earlier is that that's okay short term for the H-1B purposes, but then you're going to you will run into problems if you attempt to obtain lawful permanent residence through the same company. And here's the basic reason, on a basic level as to why. When you are applying for an H-1B, you need to show that it's a specialty occupation or an occupation that normally requires a 4-year degree and that you have the 4-year degree. That's basically it for an H-1B. The process for the labor certification, the PERM, you go through the Department of Labor, and the Department of Labor is set up to protect the American worker. And what they do is you have to go through a screening process. So at the end of the screening process, through your own company, what you would be basically telling the Department of Labor is, I can't find anyone like me. Well, no duh, so you're overly restrictive, and you're restricting the American worker from opportunities to obtain a job here, and therefore you would not qualify under permit regulations for lawful permanent residents. So that's why that strategy, although it may work short term under an H-1B scenario, and we've had it work many times, it won't necessarily work long term for you. Now, there's nothing to say, though, that your company can file your H-1B, but then you have a separate sponsor to file your perm. So long as once you are approved and your green card's approved, that you will go for the perm, that you're going to start working and you're going to stay working with the perm company. So that you could have that strategy as well. But as you can see, it entails a strategy, and you need to sit down with someone to find out what your long-term strategy is going to be.
Question?
Okay. Hello, I'm Andrea. I'm from Venezuela, and I have a question. If
place.
If I finish my OPT time and then I want to go and do a PhD, when I finish that period, do I have another OPT time?
I believe once you exhausted, that's pretty much it. I mean, you have one set of OPT.
Maybe see if I understand, because I heard this before. So you finish one degree, go do your OPT, come back for another degree. Do you have access to another OPT?
It depends if you have any time left on your OPT. You can always recapture time on your OPT if you did not fully utilize the OPT. But I believe that you're limited to a 12-month period for OPT.
So it's tied to the individual, not to the amount of degrees that you get?
I believe it's to the individual.
Question?
I'll double check on that for you, but I'm pretty sure it's to the individual.
Question?
Hello, my name is Samuel. I'm from Russia, and I'm in entertainment business, bachelor's. And my question is, can my citizenship affect me getting a job here? And might be there any issues if there's like international tensions between the countries affected, or it's nothing to worry about? Thank you.
That's a great question.
It depends on who your employer is going to be. I mean, if you are privy to sensitive information, you may not be able to get a job unless you're a U.S. citizen. If we see this a lot in certain IT fields who have contracts with the U.S. government or the federal government, even the state governments, that if you don't pass certain clearance, then you cannot have that position in that company. And that may restrict your employment opportunities depending on the field that you want to go in. So that's why a lot of my clients who have for the longest time have had green cards, but they're hesitant to obtain U.S. citizenship for one reason or another. They end up getting it so that they can go ahead and accept that position with that company. For the most part, most countries do allow dual citizenship. There are a handful of countries that are somewhat restrictive. Germany is very restrictive when it comes to dual citizenship. But you could obtain prior authorization from the German government before you go ahead and obtain U.S. citizenship, so you can preserve dual citizenship. But for most countries, you can have dual citizenship, and as long as you have U.S. citizenship, then you can go ahead and fulfill those requirements for technology-sensitive type positions.
Question? Yeah. So if you finish your OPT period and you don't get a sponsorship, you have to go back. Do the U.S. companies still prefer to hire you?
You have to what?
Like if you finish your OPT period and you don't get a sponsorship, so I guess you have to go back to your home country?
Either that or re-enroll in school.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't and you go back home, so do the U.S. companies still prefer to hire, like if you're back home, or do they look at people already in the U.S.?
Well, that will depend on the employer. And as Nya was mentioning, sometimes if a company has operations in other countries, you can have an advantage with that if they say, okay, can I then continue to work from Singapore, from China, from those places, India. So it totally depends on the employer in that case. Question from the audience online?
Yeah, I actually have a question from Miguel, who's out in the lobby. And he wants to know, how long is the OPT for the mastery program? And again, is it possible to extend it?
Do we have somebody from international department here that can answer that? I can give my own answer, but I will make sure that. I believe it's 12 months.
It's 12 months.
Yeah.
It's 12 months, and if it's a STEM degree, then it's an additional 17.
Go ahead. Okay. And here's some questions from online students. Both Arturo and Paula asked similar questions. For the timeline, if you finish your OPT and need to apply for an H-1B, what happens in between? Can you stay in the country and seek other job opportunities?
Yeah. If your OPT expires after April 1st, but before the October 1st starting date for the H-1B, your OPT is automatically extended through September 30th. During the time your application is rejected or just refused, then you will have the standard 60 days after that.
Just got a text from the international department. It is 12 months.
Right, and
People from all over.
Here's a question from Rashil. He says he has a question for the attorney. Is there any possibility for any United States citizens who are a family member to sponsor me to file any type of visa?
That's a very, very long question, but I should start charging for these questions. Yeah. Yes and no. When you say sponsorship, you have to determine what do you mean by sponsorship, because are you sponsoring a visa, or are you sponsoring in the sense of economic backing should something happen to you while you're here? So the question needs to be clarified a little bit. If we're talking about sponsoring in order to get a visa, if that family member has a business and they want to hire you for an H-1B, that's one way. If you're talking about family-based types of petitions, there's a limited number of ways that a family member could sponsor you. The most immediate ways would be a spouse. If you are under 21, a U.S. citizen parent, and if you have a child over the age of 21 who's a U.S. citizen, those are the immediate relatives. That's the immediate way to get a visa here, sponsored by a family member. Any other way would require long visa waits, and we're talking about anywhere between 2 years to 25 years, and during which time you are not allowed to remain in the United States in and of itself based on that application. You have to find a different type of visa to stay here. For example, if you have a parent, but you're now over 21, and your parents are permanent residents or a U.S. citizen, yes, they can petition for you, but it's going to take at minimum 2 years, possibly around 7 or 8 in that type of case. If you are married to a permanent resident, not a U.S. citizen, that's going to take about 2 years. So you're going to have to find a way to maintain status during those 2 years while your visa number becomes available. It's all about visa availability. And if you don't fall within one of the first 3 categories that I mentioned, those are immediate relatives, you fall into preference categories, and the downside to that is that there are visa waits, significant visa waits.
Question?
Hello, my name's Arturo. I'm in creative writing for entertainment, and I wanted to ask, could applying for an internship for a company help your chances to receive sponsorship after graduation?
Yes. Anybody want to follow? I will say to that your internship is the vehicle to try to get to any kind of sponsorship. That's what you prove yourself that the folks have been talking about. Go work really hard. But even before you accept that internship, be aware of whether or not they'd be willing to do it. They've done it with somebody else, because otherwise you could have a great internship, but that could be the end of the road. So that's the one tool that you have in your hands that everybody keeps repeating. You have to use your OPT, use it wisely, find the right employer, and that it gives you the chances to stay. That's what you want.
Yeah, if you can
You
get
wanna
your
add to
foot
that?
in the door with an internship, with OPT or something like that, then yeah, you should absolutely have the goal of trying to get sponsored with an H-1B. And you should be very forward with your company about that, hey, I'd like to, at the end of this internship, at the end of my OPT, I'd like to be sponsored for an H-1B. Do you guys do that? Mm-hmm.
Question?
Yes. Okay. I have a question from Koi. I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong. He said, I've already left the U.S. for almost a year now, and I've been trying to apply for jobs to get back there. And now I'm no longer a student and never did OPT. Am I at a disadvantage? Is there a possibility to get back in again?
Can you re-pick up an OPT?
Yeah. I mean, you can always recapture any time that you haven't used on an OPT. If you never used it at all, yeah. I mean, you could. Well, you can't apply for OPT directly in that case because you've waited past 60 days after your completion date. But you can always come back to school, and then once you complete your new program, then you can apply for OPT at that point. But you do have that 60-day time limit. You have, 90 days before your completion up to 60 days after your completion to file for OPT. So OPT is not going to be an option for this individual, but that doesn't preclude her from attempting to come back, pursuing a different course of study, or even applying for an H-1B.
Text from International. OPTs are per degree. So apparently you could get a degree, apply for OPT, get another degree, apply for an OPT as well.
Okay, good.
So the question about PhD, you could do that. Question? This right here.
Sorry, I have my
Okay,
microphone
sorry.
back here still. I have another question from Kareem. Is there a reciprocity for H-1B visa depending on the country or nationality? For example, my F-1 visa is limited to 6 months only.
No, there's no reciprocity agreements with H-1Bs. That deals mainly with a different type of visa. It's an E-2 visa that they're usually referring to when you're talking about that. The question deals with, does my home country have to be from a specific country in order for me to be eligible for the full H-1B period? The answer is no. It doesn't really matter where you're from.
Question here.
Hi. While I'm doing my OPT, can I study something else, like a master or a PhD?
Yeah, I mean, you're basically free to be here for that 1 year. If you are going to re-enroll into a different program, you may want to talk to your designated school official about the proper procedure for I-20 issuance at that point. That might be your best course of action.
Question?
Okay. From a question from Sarah from online, if I had a baby by an American during my F-1 visa time, would I be allowed to stay after graduation?
Love is a beautiful thing.
No. No. Let me just leave it at that. No, it's the best course of action in that case is to get married to that U.S. citizen. I mean, if you had a baby with a U.S. citizen, you may want to strongly consider marriage in that case. I'm not a religious person, but just from a legal point of view, you may want to really consider marriage. A child, in order for a child to petition for a parent, the child has to be over 21.
Okay.
Okay, 10 minutes, so we'll take a couple more questions.
All right. There's a lot of questions coming in from online. If a Canadian company with offices in the U.S. hires you, can they hire you under an OPT or an H-1B?
Yeah, I mean, if they have a company here, I mean, as long as they have an active company here that can sponsor you for H-1B, there may be a subsequent strategy in that specific case. Given that they have a parent company in Canada, one of the things that they may want to consider in that case is hiring you as a manager in Canada, to run some sort of department in Canada for 1 year. In that way, they can transfer you over to the United States, to the U.S. branch, and then you'll be eligible for an L1 where you're not subject to the caps. And with the L1, if you get renewed after the year, you can actually apply under the EB2 category for permanent residence, and there's currently no wait for those for that category. So you may have an alternative strategy in that case, other than getting hired directly in the U.S. company. You'll sacrifice 1 year in Canada, but in the long term, it makes much more sense to work it that way.
Question?
Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm studying right now EBMS, and this question is for Martina. How hard was it for you to find a company that actually didn't mind the fact that you were an international student that was actually looking for a more extended time? Was it easy to find IMG directly, or was it a struggle to actually find that one company that...
Well, IMG was always my plan A. And through career development, they helped me to get the interview. And once I got there, I knew it was all upon me. And when they asked me about my visa status and I told them it's OPT, they knew right away that they would have to file an H-1B for me if they want to keep me. So that's the advantage of bigger companies. You know, they're familiar with OPTs, with H-1Bs. So it was pretty easy for me. Of course, I had to work harder and make sure that I'm worth the sponsorships, but they provide me the lawyers, so they guide me throughout the whole process. And yeah.
Question?
Hi, my name is Fahad, and I'm studying game art. So if you're, let's just say, she applied. You're applying right now for H1, and let's just say it does not fall through this year. So does it kind of gets into the backlog for next year? Because she's going to be here for 29 months, which is more than 24 months. So does it like count for the next year as well? Or, I mean, not refused, but it's kind of, you know, because of the over submissions.
No, it will not.
No. You have to do it again? Okay.
Yes.
Can you do it again?
Yes.
Okay.
But you may have to leave if the OPT runs out.
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Christian Benavides. I'm from Venezuela, and I'm the game dev program right now on the final project. It's good to see that someone international in the game dev that's working Microsoft Activision, that's actually inspires me too. So my question is, I heard when I went to career dev that they told me that if they don't want to get in the whole mess, well, not mess, but process of making the visa and stuff, they will send you to another place they have, right? Like in another country. And did you ever had that case when looking for a job?
I never got offered a position in another country, but it's true that a lot of these companies are international. A lot of larger game companies have studios all across the world. And certainly when you're doing your job hunt, recruiters will actually try and offer you these, but I never really took them up on the offers. Sometimes they'll say, "How do you feel about moving to Ireland or to Sweden or moving to China?" And if that is an opportunity that interests you, then go for it. But for me, it was always a case, I wanted to stay in the US, so I've never taken them up on that. But yeah, you can absolutely get a job working for an international gaming company that has branches in the US, but you work out of another country. Yeah.
I actually have seen an example of that for going out after 6 years and then being able to reapply to H-1Bs. That's correct?
Well, the H-1B is good for 3 years. You can extend it for another 3 years. And then at the end of that, if you don't have any other way of staying here, you have to leave for a year.
Right.
And then you can go ahead and apply again.
Right. So I've seen cases, international companies that send the employee out for a year in another office in Europe or Asia or whatever, so they can stay the year out and then reapply to H-1B and come back and then buy another 6 years.
Yeah, but if it's an international company, a strategy that would make a lot more sense is to have them run a branch or a division.
That's right.
So that they can then qualify as international managers When they come back to the U.S. branch, then they're eligible for L1s that are not subject to the cap.
You wanted to add something, yeah?
Yeah, it's the same as our industry. Like when Ireland contact me, because they know that I'm Vietnamese. If I work in Singapore, they don't require work visa for Vietnamese in Singapore. So they ask me if I want to go to Singapore to work for Ireland. So that's one of the options.
Congratulations.
They'll do whatever convenient.
Yeah.
I think.
Absolutely. We'll take one last question.
Okay, this is from Paula. If the OPT doesn't come before the end of your grace period, can you legally stay in the country as long as you're waiting for an answer?
Yes, as long as you timely filed, yes.
Okay, so thank you. Okay, we'll take one more.
One more, sorry. Is it possible to leave the country during your OPT? And that was the last one.
Yes, if you have a valid visa, yes.
Let's have this lady in the front. And that's the last one, yes.
Okay, I'll give 2 questions, okay? Hello, I'm Monica and I'm in Masters in Film. And my first question is, for how long duration can we stay back home after our graduation or Masters and we can come back to use our OPT? If I want to go back and...
Say something about 60 or 90 days?
Yeah, you don't want to be out too long.
Dangerous.
Yeah, it's very dangerous to stay out too long.
Yeah.
They may not give you the visa to go back. It depends on the embassy.
I wouldn't recommend.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
I wouldn't even visit Tijuana. I'll put it that way. Just in case they think on the wrong side of the city.
You should visit your family while you're still a student, because at that moment you have the visa student to
I've
re-entry.
already visited once.
What's your
After
second
you
question?
graduate,
Okay. And the second question, the Masters in Film, does it come under STEM?
Masters in Film, STEM.
in film.
Just stress down.
I doubt it. I have the list, but I doubt it.
Science, technology, engineering, math. But it doesn't mean that's the role that you may be doing in a company. Who knows? But I mean, there's always ways to get creative. As
I don't know how about your country, but for my country, they give me 1 year visa. So in 1 year, you can go back and forth. It's up to you. But after 1 year, your visa already expires. And when you have to reapply to re-entry to America, and you may ask you question, and you may say yes or no. That's dangerous.
Text from international, a film does not qualify under STEM, unfortunately. Got it. All right, well, thank you very much, and thank you for coming. Thank you, our panelists. And Henry.
Yes.